Welcome, everyone. Episode 22 of the Dolphins Make Me Cry podcast. Your host, Steve Giordano, as we are winding down the regular season for the Dolphins, a miserable season that it has been. 2 games left at the Cleveland Browns and at the New York Jets. And the Dolphins coming off of the 29-17 victory at home last week against the 49ers. You know, they did enough. It wasn't crazy impressive. You know, Tua had a decent day. They kind of pulled out at the end with a big defensive play from Kader Kohou, picking off Brock Purdy at the end, and then sealing the deal with Devon Achane, who had an incredible day. He had a 50-yard touchdown run. He's done a hell of a job this season. Certainly a bright spot for this team. Just a versatile back, you know, a lot of passes out of the backfield. Certainly as the offense kind of evolved this year to, more of that dink and dunk style, get the ball into playmakers' hands, Achane, Jonnu Smith, to name a few. Achane's had a very, very nice season, and he's held up physically outside of the concussion that he had in New England earlier in the season. So where we're at for the Dolphins, it's going to be very interesting. Right now, as I record this, basically the Chargers have made the playoffs earlier, and they are locked in. Basically, the Dolphins need to win the last 2. They need the Broncos to lose 2, and they would need the Colts to lose 1 of 2. I mean, probably not going to happen. Right now, the Broncos did just go down in real time here, 7-3 to Cincinnati. Problem is they play the Chiefs at home next week. Chiefs are going to be playing for nothing, so they're going to basically play backups as they have the 1 seed locked up. And then the Colts playing the Giants and the Jaguars. I mean, 2 terrible teams. I don't know if I see them losing one of those games. But ultimately, Dolphins got to control what they can control. They have to win 2. Can they win 2? Yes. Should they win 2? Yes. Will they probably win 2? Yes, because that's what the Dolphins do. And then they'll get out of this season winning 9 games, and they'll try and spin that they actually, had a productive season where we kind of know the truth. And it's going to lead me to just one thing that I really want to just start with right here, and that is Stephen Ross. Now, I am a Stephen Ross fan because from an ownership perspective, nobody has put in more money and resources to not only the facility, the practice facility, the stadium, bringing concerts here, World Cup, F1. He's infused money into that, stadium more than anybody ever had, and he really did the bulk of it himself. So from an ownership perspective, from a guy who's just a billionaire and has done an amazing job in real estate and what he puts into this team, and the fact that I know he wants to win desperately as he's in his 80s, I cannot stand pat with what happened.
It's got
at the
issues
end of last
and
week's
it's banged up.
So on the sideline,
able to create
we got 2 6-8 teams, and we got Stephen Ross
celebrating
the victory
when
like we just won the Super Bowl, and then in a very calculated, Dolphin video that went out on social media where they were running for show the locker room where game balls are given out by Mike McDaniel. McDaniel always gives out 1,000 game balls, which is
40 to
a little bit too much, but fine.
That's a problem.
You give one
particularly
to your
for this
kicker,
game,
who kicks 5 field goals,
and particularly down
you
this
give
stretch,
one to Kader Kohou, who has the interception.
As good as Tua is playing,
and then Ross gives McDaniel a game
from a
ball,
completion percentage
which tells you all you need to know. Calculated that this is out on
has
social
obviously
media.
been taken away,
and I've said this last week, and I'll continue to say it. Nobody's going
a little
anywhere.
bit more of it
This
last
is going to be
week.
status quo.
But
this is going to be the Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel show.
You're not going to be able to run
as
the
we
ball.
move
You're not
forward
going to be
here.
able to be physical up front. And
The fact that he did that, and it was that public
you're not going to
kind of video
get
that went out,
crazy
is
completion
basically him saying, "I'm putting my stamp on you. You're not going anywhere."
Because it's
I
making
don't think Greer's going
your
anywhere.
offense a little bit too
But my problem with it is, you're celebrating on the sideline like you just won the goddamn Super Bowl, and you're 7-8, and you beat a shitty 49er team that was 6-8.
Next week,
and that, my friends, in
49ers,
addition to the physicality problems that I have on this team as to why they cannot get over the hump,
running football is
that's what you're celebrating. You're celebrating mediocrity that you just won a game at 7-8 in a season where you spent millions to
have Toronto
restructure
instead.
contracts
You're gonna be out
and build
both
a
of your
quote-unquote
tackles
Super Bowl
for
or
this
at least
game, most likely.
playoff win
That's
or
gonna hurt
second
big
round
time
win,
because the
division winner
Texans, albeit they're not a
roster,
great team,
and you're sitting there
they're a
on the
pretty good
sideline
team.
pumping your
They
fist
have some
like you just won
bookends
3 Super Bowls.
that can get
To
after
me,
the quarterback
the
and that
bar
can make Tua uncomfortable,
for
even
Stephen
with his
Ross on
quick
winning,
release.
if that's
you
what
don't
he's
have a run
looking
game
at
to
as
offset
winning,
it,
and
that's
I
gonna
truly
hurt,
I don't
and that's
believe
gonna
he
put
is.
a lot of pressure on
But if
Tua
that's
to
what the
come
bar
through
is
and
for
to-
winning,
in this game,
and that's
with the
what
way
you're
the defense is
celebrating,
playing, you're
like,
really going to
I'm
have to score
sorry.
30 if you
Your
think you're gonna
bar
have any shot.
is here,
So,
and
some
the
news
Bills, Chiefs,
just broke
Ravens,
today.
you know,
Odell
take your
Beckham
pick of the
Jr.,
top
9
6
catches,
teams
55
in the
yards
conference.
in his Dolphin
They're all
career.
up here.
They parted
Because
ways.
that bar is
I
way
mean,
too low, my
you want
friend.
to talk about another indictment?
This season
of Chris
has been
Greer.
an outright
Chris
failure
Greer,
and
can you stop
disaster,
signing
and a lot
guys
of it
in their 30s
has to do with
who are over the
piss
hill,
poor planning,
who are just
not
here for
having
a
the
money
backup
grab to play in
quarterback
Miami,
when Tua goes
and
down,
who actually don't want to be a part of the
not
team.
believing
Odell
in
Beckham
building
Jr.,
the trenches
you
properly
signed him
to have a
hurt,
proper
and he
run
missed 4
game
games.
so Tua can be
He then
successful.
finally gets in the mix.
Not building
he does
your
nothing.
defensive
he's,
line.
He's moping
Not
around
believing
the
in
field.
paying guards
Every
and
report
drafting
about him
guards
is
high.
that he just
Not
didn't
believing
want to
in
be
what
here
they
and didn't
do
want
and
to
what
play.
they bring to the
and
offense.
now, boom,
You know,
you cut
locking
him
up
in your
Tyreek
biggest
Hill when you
stretch
didn't
of the
have
year.
to. Locking up
It's
Tua
just, and
when
you paid
didn't
him
have
$2
to.
million.
Debatable.
You could have used that $2
and we can
million
get into that.
for a pass
But
rusher that we needed.
there's so
for
many
a guard
things
that
here
we needed,
that are
but
just,
instead
it's
you
just
paid an
blood
over-the-hill
on
wide
Chris Greer
receiver
and Mike
who doesn't want to play
McDaniel's
for your team.
hands. But
So
the
another
reality is,
beautiful
this is going to be a running
indictment
back
of Chris
situation.
Greer,
I would be
and why, in
absolutely
my opinion,
if
his
Greer
time
got
has
fired.
passed
Clearly
him, and he
McDaniel
shouldn't
got
be
fired.
here. He's
He
going to
got
be
a
here,
3-year
unfortunately.
extension.
But
And
in my
frankly,
opinion,
here's the
this is
one
just
reason
another
as to why
indictment
I'm
on
fine with it.
a poor move
If they
by
sit
him.
here and
my problem with
fire
Chris
Greer,
Greer
and the next
and a lot of
GM
the
has
moves
to
that he
come in
makes is
and he
this.
has to take Mike
He
McDaniel,
works with an owner that will spend
then
more
you're going to
money
have
than
one
anyone.
dysfunction,
If
and
you
you're also
didn't
going to
have salary
have
cap, Stephen Ross would
basically
be
a
in the
lame
top
duck
5
coach.
of
Whereas
guys
if we're
who
going to
would
be
spend the
lame
most
ducks next
money
year,
in the league.
and it's going to be
And he
win
still
or you're
does,
gone,
and he signs
it needs
checks.
to be everybody.
So you as a
And the
GM,
way the contracts are structured,
it's
with
not
the
impressive
players,
if you
and
can
what
go out
you
and
did and who
sign
you
a
paid
name
and how you paid them,
in their 30s.
you have to run it back.
I could do that.
Now,
What's impressive to
that
me
being
is can you
said,
get bargain
to
players
fix this team,
that are going to contribute.
they
You
need
can
to go
draft
into
them
this
well,
draft.
You can
Not to
develop
get
them
too
well.
ahead of ourselves.
You
we
don't have to
two
pay him an
games
arm
to
and a
go.
leg.
But we need to go
And
into
those are
this
the
draft
guys that this team
and
is
into
missing.
free agency.
Andrew Van
You're going to be
Ginkles, who you let
strapped.
go. A
And
lot
you're
of
not
these
going to be
guys
able to
in the
fill every hole that
trenches,
you have.
You know, guys like Christian Wilkins
But
that you could have signed
you
ahead
have
of time.
got to find me
And that is the
a
fundamental
top-notch
flaw
free agent guard
of the Dolphins
and a
organization
top-notch
right now.
drafted
And
guard.
something has to give.
In
now,
addition
where we're at right
to defensive
now,
tackle help,
where you have
a
these
true
4 games
nose
to
tackle,
go,
and
and
a
essentially it's
linebacker,
pretty simple.
and you're going to really
you
have
win
to
4,
rebuild your secondary.
you go 10-7.
There's no way
Broncos
Javon
would have
Holland's
to
going to be
lose
back on
2.
this team next year.
I
You're
don't
not
see
going
it
to pay
happen.
him unless
I
you
think it's a pipe
franchise him, which
dream
I
and a
highly
half.
doubt would happen. You're going to have no
One,
Jordan
you win
Poyer,
in
thank
4,
God.
it would be 5 in a row.
He'll probably
The
retire.
Broncos, yes, they have a decent shot of
You
losing
know,
a
you have
couple
other,
games,
you know, you got
fine.
Kendall Fuller, you
But
got Ramsey.
I find it hard to
they're
believe
older.
that they're going to win.
But you
4
got
in
a
row.
lot to do in these
And where
trenches.
does that leave them? Somebody's talked about
And
this
if the
week
two
about
of them walk in
having a
to
successful
the final
season or
interview
not.
for this year,
If they do
with
not win a
Ross,
playoff game,
and the first thing
this
out
is
of
not
their
a
mouth
successful
isn't,
season. Even if they
we
go
need
and
to
win
fix
10
the
and they win the
trenches
5 in a
and
row
the
and they made
physical
the playoff,
play
that's
on
still
this
not
team,
a successful season to me.
then I'd fire
because
them both.
The bar was raised.
But that's
last
what
year
has to happen.
when you
and it's
paid
what's
guys, you
probably
brought
going
guys
to
back,
happen.
you paid everybody
We're
and
gonna
their
go into
mothers.
next year.
We went
running
into
it
the year
back.
saying you need to win a playoff
But
game.
can
We really
these
said
guys
you need to
learn
win your division,
from their
which
mistakes?
is already long gone,
Now, the
and
problem
you
with
need to
Greer
then
is
win a
he's
playoff
been
game.
here essentially
Unless
as GM
they
for
win a
6 years.
playoff game,
He's
this
been in
is
the
not a
organization for like
successful
20,
season. Now,
and he's
I've
had
said it
bits and
before, and
pieces
there'll be other
prior
time
to
to
the
talk
6
about
years of
this.
him being
The
the
off
sole
season for this team
GM,
is going to be
where he
very,
was a
very
co-GM.
important. Nobody's
So
getting
the
fired.
blood
I
of
would
this
be floored
situation
and shocked
is all over his
McDaniel,
hands.
Greer, if
Missed
anybody
draft
got fired.
picks, not
Barring
paying guys,
they lose 4 in a
appropriately,
row
not
here,
paying
even
guys
at
ahead
that,
of time
I don't
at
think
certain
anybody's
points,
getting fired.
letting guys like
Because it's just not
Van Ginkel run
what the way is
and,
right
and
now.
leave,
The way the money is,
and
way
all the
guys are
different
locked
things
up, all
that
these
went on
contracts
with this team.
You know, you'd have to get a new
The
GM
problem
in here
with
who's
this
going to want to
team
accept
is the fact
McDaniel
that
on a 3-year
they
deal.
do not
It's just
believe
not
in
what's probably going to
physicality
happen.
in the trenches.
And there's been a lot of
and
reports and a lot of
beating
false
the guy
reporting.
in front of you
Hey, he's on the hot
to
seat.
win a football.
Hey, this. Hey, that.
It's all about speed,
If you ask
speed,
me,
speed. I've
none
said
of
it
them
all
are going
year. I
anywhere.
hate to sound like a broken
Irregardless
record,
of what happens
but
at the end of this year.
that to me,
They're going to
is where
reevaluate
those
it.
guys have
They're
to
going to
go
make
in
some
and they got to
moves,
say, okay,
and then next year everybody comes
we've
back
built
on
a team
very, very hot
good enough
seat
to win
see
games
what the next move
against
is for this
subpar
organization.
opponents. But we have
Now,
not built a team
when you look at the
good
game
enough to
last
win
week,
in the
and
cold
you look at
against
the totality
top-notch
of this
teams,
season, where this
to win
team
our
is
own
at.
division, to
At
win a
this
playoff.
point in week
And
15
can
or
we
whatever week we're
actually
in at
look
this point.
ourselves in the
You
mirror,
are
Chris
what you
Greer
are.
and Mike McDaniel, and
This
say,
team is not going to
okay,
change. The
gonna
physicality that's not
we're
there
going to
is
build
not all of
off
a
the
sudden going
good.
to show
And
up.
I'm not going to sit here and say
So
there's
when it
no
comes
good
to
because
this
there is some.
particular game against
We're gonna
Houston,
build off the
there's a
good.
couple of factors you have to
We
think about.
have to change
Number
the
one,
philosophy.
the
You have to
Dolphins do
tweak
not
the philosophy.
win the big game.
Nobody's
that they
saying
need
don't
to
have
win
speed.
in
Nobody's
the
saying
spot that
don't
they
have
need to
speed
win.
at your corners.
They beat up on bad teams. They've done it for
John
3
Smith,
years,
like your tight end. Like,
and they
nobody's
very,
saying
very
that.
rarely win that big
But
game.
you can't get a third
against
and one.
playoff opponent, particularly on the
If
road.
you can't get a third and one in
Outside
this
of the
league,
Rams game
you're
Monday
not
night
winning in the playoffs.
about a month ago.
It is not happening.
So
if you
this
can't
again,
stop a third and
they
one,
get this
you're not winning in
spotlight
the playoffs.
thrust upon them where
And that brings
everybody
us
doubts
now
them that they're going to win this game.
to how this season
Can
will
they
end.
actually change the
And
narrative?
what's interesting today,
You
reports
won't
came
get
out.
me to believe
really, we
they're
should go
going to
back to
change
last
the
week.
narrative until they
Tua
actually
battling
change.
a hip injury.
It was the same thing in Green Bay.
Looks like
they
he
didn't suck
heard
me
it
in against the
Texans.
Packers to think they were going to win that
He
game.
was at some points of the week
They
last
didn't
week
suck
going
me
into
in
the
against
49er
Buffalo
game.
this year.
Questionable.
You're not going to get
Played
me
the game,
to
obviously.
believe
Played
it's happening
fairly well,
until it happens.
nothing crazy.
Now, when you
And
analyze this entire
then
game,
today
is this winnable?
listed
for
as
the
doubtful
Dolphins?
for tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So
if they could come
probably
out,
not
play
playing.
their game,
Gonna go again with
establish
Tyler
a
Huntley.
semblance of a
Tyler
run
Huntley
game,
up close and
get
personal.
me 90 to 100
You
to
know,
110 on the
decent
ground.
kid,
Control
has some
the
mobility.
game. The
Can't
Texans
really
have
throw
their
it worth a
issues.
lick.
The Texans O-line is
Definitely could be
decimated.
a problem in
It's
this
not
game.
that great. CJ
Luckily,
Stroud
you're
has had a
playing
bit of a
very,
sophomore
very
slump
bad
because of
Browns
it.
team that probably just
They
wants to
do
get
have
the
a pretty
season over
decent
with.
run game.
But
with
it's going to be
Mixon.
very interesting because he's obviously Huntley
And
has
it's
not
funny,
played
if you think
since
back to
Tua's
the
been
early
back,
years
whatever,
of the
it's been
Texans
7
in the early
weeks.
2000s, they
And
owned the Dolphins. And
He
they
just
were
wasn't really
5-0
against
against the Dolphins to
Won the
start
game
as a
against
franchise,
Patriots,
and there
did
were some
really
gut-wrenching
little
losses.
to nothing.
The Dolphins have
And
made
what
up
really
for it
worries you
in
is
recent
when he actually
vintage.
was playing,
But
your run game
where
was
we're
actually
at
effective.
now,
Whereas
the
now,
Texans
it's been insanely
are a
ineffective
better team than you.
the past,
And we can also
8,
think
9
about, and
weeks.
it's been much
Really
talked about
since
this
Tua
week,
came back,
the
which is
Larry
kind of
Tunsil
crazy.
trade from 2019. Right
And
before the beginning
you
of the
also
year.
kind of get
It
the
gave
feeling,
Dolphins
obviously, things
all
are
the
going to
draft
depend on
picks
what goes on with
and
this
the
Bronco
ability
game.
to get Tyreek
They're
Hill,
now
to get
down
Waddle, to get
7-3.
Tua. You know, but
who else
really
will
won
they
the deal?
sit?
I think
Guys who are
ultimately
kinda
both
on
teams
that
won in
bubble.
some regard.
You know, Toronto
But
Armstead, who's
the
battling
Texans
injury.
have won
You know, what
in
do
the
you do with
playoffs.
Calais Campbell?
The
There's a lot of reports
Texans
that they'll
have a
if they're
franchise
eliminated,
QB.
they'll release him
They
to go
have
to a playoff contender.
the franchise
I don't know if I
tackle
love
that
that,
you traded to
but
them.
I guess it is what it is.
And you now have a
Probably
lot of
just more the
speed
fandom
and a
that
lot of
pisses you
talent,
off.
but not a
Great
lot
guy,
of wins, and
great leader,
particularly a
great
lot
signing.
of playoff wins. So it's a
Like
very
Greer,
interesting
you know,
dynamic
waited till the last
between
minute to
both
make.
franchises,
Been
and it
one
makes
of
it a
your
very,
MVPs of
very
your team, and
intriguing
now you're
game.
gonna possibly
And
cut him to go to
I want to believe
playoff contender
they
and,
can
you know,
come
maybe
out
win a Super Bowl
and they
in
can
what
do
could
some different
potentially be his
things and
final
win
year.
this game.
Frankly,
and not
what
beat
I would do is
themselves.
if you're going
But
to do that,
like
I
I
would
said
try
before,
to make an
I
agreement
truly
with him
believe at this point
for
you
him
are
to
what you
re-sign
are,
with you next year.
and the ceiling for this
in a,
team
you know,
is probably
in
not
the
going to be
limited
9
role of
wins.
the snaps he can
They're
play.
probably going to
and then
go,
you have to
you
draft
know,
a guy who
for
can
whatever
be,
would
quote
be
unquote,
3 and 1.
the bulk
But they're
of that
just not going to
position
do what they need
for
to
the
do. It's
season.
going to be 9 and 8 or 8 and 9.
But it'll be interesting
and
in this game.
It'll frustrate
as to
you
how
because
many
what'll
guys
probably
they
happen is
push
they
the
lose to the
envelope
Texans, and then
that
they'll
are
come
kinda
out and beat the
fringe,
49ers, and then beat the
injured,
Browns and beat the
not
Jets. And you're going to sit there and you're going to be
if you were in a
pissed because
must-win,
you
would
would
probably
have
play the
made
game,
the playoffs if you
but
just would have
maybe you're
knocked
going to
off
be
the
out.
Texans.
But
So
if you go into
that
this
being
game
said,
and the Broncos lose,
hoping that I'm dead wrong,
it
because
really
would
just doesn't
be
really look like
amazing
it
for them
matters
to
at this point.
actually
that Tua's
change the
gonna
narrative.
play. So
Let's
you're
call
playing
this game the
Tyler
change the
Huntley.
narrative game. Because
And,
the narrative is you cannot
I mean, it is
beat
what
a
it
good
is.
team
My
in a big
fear
spot
is they're trying
on
to
the
figure
road
something out
with
for
your
next
playoff
year
lives on the line.
to
You can't do it.
get him on the roster,
So,
which is fine.
Can we change
but
the narrative?
don't sit here and try and sell
I'm
me
going to
on
tell you
he's gonna
right
be your
now.
backup
In
quarterback
Steve
next year.
Gio's
Because if you go,
week
if you do that,
15
you can fire
Miami
Baltimore.
Dolphin pick in the
Because,
league where they
you know,
play.
Decent
for
player. Obviously
Dolphins,
was
Texans,
playing,
Houston,
you know,
1
in
o'clock
a
Sunday.
lose-lose situation. He was on the
Texans
Ravens
are
practice squad. He gets here
by
mid-season.
3.
You know,
Over
very
under
hard
is
offense to learn. They
47.
got to dumb it down. They
Very,
didn't dumb
very
down at
intriguing
first than they
matchup.
did.
Texans also off
You know,
of a
and
bye,
he's
which
just
is
not that
important
good.
to think
He's-
about. They
he's
were able to
not-
rest up and heal up.
He's a
Dolphins
third string
with their
quarterback. is what
defensive
he is.
issues
He's a third
last
string
week.
quarterback
The
playing
Texans
second
have some
string.
issues of
So you're
of
going
their
to
own.
have.
I
you
do
know,
think the
you're just
Dolphins are going to
limited.
come out.
And
I think
frankly,
they're going to play
with
a
Tua, the
spirited game.
offense is
I
limited
think Tua is going
based
to play
on how poor
to the
the
level that
offensive
he's
line
been
is,
playing.
how
But
poor the
ultimately,
run
this
game
will be a
is,
game,
how poor the
much like the Buffalo
commitment to the
game
run
in
game
Buffalo
is,
earlier
and
in
the
the
fact
year,
that you've
where
gotten
offensively
little
you did
to
a lot of
nothing
really good things,
out of
and you
you
put
know
up a
two
lot of
top
points.
tier
But
wideouts.
one,
You know,
you didn't
Waddle would be
score in the
another
big spot
guy
at the end
who
of the
you're
game.
probably not going
And
to see
two,
play.
your defense let you
battling
down.
injury, didn't
This
play last
defense
week. You're probably
has
not
been
going
a
to push it.
disappointment, in my opinion, for
And it
most
makes
of the
this
year.
to be a
I
very
like
kind
Anthony
of
Weaver as a defensive
weird
coordinator,
game,
but your
you know,
problem
whereas
here is
if
this.
you were
They
playing
don't get enough turnovers and takeaways.
even if you didn't have every starter, but if you played last week's roster,
and they don't get any
sacks, beat them by 20.
I think
now,
the Dolphins lose this game 30-20, bringing them to 6-8. And then we have 3 games down the stretch, and you would really, really need a miracle to make the play. So let's pray I'm wrong. Dolphins, can you come out and win a big game, please? Ever? That'd be like mind-blowing if you could actually do that.
And the style
we'll
of
see you
play
next
that
week.
Play that
Let's go Dolphins.
Does not travel well and does not lean itself to winning football. But, what you'd love to see here would be a miracle. Could they win this game? Could you at least get it, alive for another week, go into the Jets? You never know. See what happens. But, highly, highly unlikely. But, there's always a but. If you did, and you got it as a 7th seed, and you went to Buffalo, that would be something. You never know. Division game. Now, without Tua, forget it. But if you told me you were going to have a full complement in that game, with some momentum, I take my chances. But that being said, there's no shot in hell that that's happening because we're Dolphin fans, and good things typically don't happen to us because that's kind of how it works. So we're going to make this one a little bit shorter this week. Steve Gio's Week 17 pick in the league where they play for pay. Dolphins, Browns at the mistake at the lake. The Dolphins favored on the road by 3 over under 34. That's kind of been moving around, obviously based on injury, based on Tua and such. My prediction, I think the Dolphins will come out. I think they will try to establish the run. I think they'll probably get a decent run game going, kind of the way they did with Huntley earlier in the season. I think the Browns will make mistakes as they do. They'll actually give our defense, which is ranked 26th in takeaways and 26th in sacks. I think we'll probably get a few takeaways. And I think Huntley will do enough. He'll probably get Jonnu Smith involved, get a couple of touchdowns. I think the Dolphins probably win this game, 21-14. They do enough. You don't love it. And then maybe, just maybe, you live to fight another day next week if other things kind of break right for you. Let's hope. I never want to root for the Dolphins to lose. I know a lot of people will say, hey, go get a better draft pick, but I want to win games. Let's let all that stuff figure itself out. Let's go Dolphins. We will see you next week for the finale of the season. See you then.